Hi, welcome to Punchline Talks, the business breakfast briefers. I'm Mark Owen, and each week I invite a panel of business experts to review the morning newspapers, find out what's going on in their own individual business and their own individual business sectors, and finally, what's caught their eye in this week's Punchline. But before I start, I'd just like to thank our fantastic sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors. So a big thanks to them. Okay, let's meet the panel this week. We've got Rob Lister. He's the Managing Director of Lister Unified Communications based in Stonehouse. They've got 40 staff, a turnover of 6 million. And this week, together, we launched a mobile recycling campaign in aid of the Nelson's Trust. So we'll catch up about that and find out what's going on and also what's happening in Rob's business as well. And we've also got Andrew Roughan. He's the CEO of Plexel. Plexel is an innovation company based in London. They've got 82 staff, turnover of £17 million, and they've just taken a 51% stake in Cheltenham's Hub 8. So we'll definitely catch up all about that as well. Okay, let's just quickly share the screen and we'll go to see what's making the headlines on the BBC. So let's have a look. So we've got The Guardian. Sunak puts car drivers first in new election battle line. You'll hear more about this as the tree has been cut down in Hadrian's Wall. The Daily Telegraph. Sunak to block 20 miles an hour zones. The Times, Tory shifts to higher taxes may never be reversed. The Daily Express, PM faces calls to ditch European courts. The Eye, private schools reveal plans to use loophole to avoid Labour VAT charge. The Mirror, our lovely girl went to school and never came back. Terrible, terribly sad story. And again, they're making the front page of the Sun, light of our lives. The Daily Mail, moronic. For 300 years, this majestic sycamore has graced Hadrian's Wall, and a 16-year-old boy has allegedly have cut that down. The Financial Times, OpenAI in talks with even SoftBank to design ChatGPT, creator's first device. And the Daily Star, demon from hell tries to murder, shout and stone. Enough said of that really, I think. Yeah, Andrew, let's start with you actually this morning. Thanks ever so much for joining the show. What have you picked out for the papers?
So looking at the papers over the course of the week, Mark, I found three really interesting stories, one of which I think is in the process of coming out today, actually, so relatively exclusive. So I'll start with that. So there was a Cheltenham Borough Council cabinet meeting or council meeting last night that approved the £95 million council investment in the Golden Valley development. Wow. So that's an investment in the first phase, which will stimulate then the scheme that is intended to deliver 12,000 jobs to the local area. So really amazing news, like an incredible commitment from a local authority to get involved at that scale of investment in a really forward-looking development. So really exciting times ahead for Cheltenham, for Gloucestershire, for the Western Gateway region. The development itself is focused very much on cyber security and how that can be a bedrock for the digital economy in the UK. So really exciting times to come. In terms of timeline on that, so I know that the team there are working on a 2026 go live for the first building. So I think there'll be a lot more to talk about over the course of the coming weeks, months and years on excitement around that project.
That's very exciting. Let's be honest about it. I mean, this is going to be one of the biggest things that's going to happen to the county. Since I've been here over 30 odd years, and probably the same as you've been around, Rob.
Absolutely.
Very, very exciting. So, okay, we'll come back to that, I'm sure. Andrew, what else have we picked out?
So next one, I just wanted to touch on one of the stories you raised on the headlines of the newspapers, Mark. So tax on private school fees. So reading through all the commentary this week, and I know it's turning into hyperbole because of the party conferences that are coming over the course of the next fortnight or so. But it's quite interesting to see the impending Labour manifesto commitment around putting VAT on private school fees. And just really interesting if you put yourself in the position of the smaller schools, the kind of lesser funded private schools, that parents who've really stretched themselves in order to get children into a school maybe that just has the facilities or the curriculum that will support a child. And there's a lot of commentary around whether this type of tax is fair, who actually it causes a burden to. So it's probably not the parents who are sending their kids to Eton and Winchester and similar, because they, with respect to them, there probably is plenty of money slushing around, and 20% doesn't make a difference. It's actually the kind of lower end of the fee spectrum, and those parents who are making choices around not to go on holiday in order to make sure they've got enough money for the fees. So I expect that to be quite controversial. I know there's good arguments in both directions for it.
But we put our youngest daughter through a private school, and we had to make a lot of personal sacrifices. We didn't go on holiday for 7 years, just couldn't afford it. The majority of the cars in the car park weren't Maseratis or Lamborghinis or Ferraris. There was one or two, but the majority of them were like us, other parents making sacrifices. And the other thing is, by us putting our child actually through a private school meant there was a place left in a public school. And the public schools don't have enough room anyway. So what's going to happen if all these parents suddenly can't afford it? They can't suddenly open up lots of classes and get more teachers trained.
I agree. I mean, I've got an 11-year-old who's just gone to a private school for the first time 3 weeks ago. And I made a decision for 7 years. I can imagine how heartbreaking it would be to pull a child out of school at, year 9 or year 10, because you simply can't afford it, and how disruptive that might be to the kids. So I don't argue actually with the tax. I think it's the immediate application of it that really causes me a problem, that people have made, long-term planning decisions, and now, 20% later, they can't afford it.
No, without shadow of a doubt. And to move a child out of school at that particular age as well, it's heartbreaking, isn't it? Thanks ever so much for that, Andrea. Any others that we got before we go back to Rob?
Yeah, so final one for me, just the commentary around HS2. So I know there's been budget overruns and delays and such like, which tends to happen on infrastructure projects of this scale, but we seem to be pretty unlucky as a nation around our track record on time and on budget, but big infrastructure projects. Now, the news this week is around the route limitation. So, as I understand it, the HS2 is now going to be limited from Birmingham into a place called Old Oak Common. So, not really a central London location, somewhere quite outside the kind of Zone 1 area. Now, the reason I picked up this story is I'm quite interested in the politics of it. So, how it plays into the levelling up agenda. What it says to the kind of north-south divide, which was always the whole point of HS2, and what it was there to connect cities, make them commutable to each other, share a lot of the kind of economic activity and make it appropriate for people. So I'm really intrigued that this change seems to be quite a few steps back on the levelling up agenda, and how then the regions and the local authorities react to that, because I'd expect them to have quite a strong opinion in the weeks and months to come.
I couldn't agree more. Rob, what's your view on it? Should they scrap the HS2? Is it gone too far? Is common sense going to prevail?
I think it was something we really wanted, we really need. The levelling up story is really important, and it's very heartbreaking to think it's even on the agenda to start pulling the plug on a project this size. I don't understand budgets of that magnitude, and obviously, a 0.1 or 0.2% has a massive implication on the actual costs of these things, and that's clearly got out of control. But nevertheless, I would like to see it completed. It's fundamentally a good thing and a good plan. Yeah,
I mean, the trouble is there's only so much money sloshing around, and it's got to be paid somehow, isn't it? And there seems to be not enough money around. I was talking to local government councillors and stuff. It's ironic that you just said about Cheltenham Borough Council putting £95 million into Golden Valley when other areas are struggling, but again, we need that for the future. You've got to look ahead all the time. Thanks ever so much for those, Andrew, for the papers. Rob, what have you picked out today?
Well, I want to start with the article in the Telegraph of Sunak to block the 20-mile-an-hour zones. And just to really say, we've seen the Welsh government have already brought it into place in parts of Wales, or lots of Wales. And I suppose, to me, as a driver, it's very frustrating to have to go much slower than the road allows you to go, and the law, to do that. But really, I think the bigger picture for me is it seems to be the start, the shot, the first firing shots of the general election being started. We've got the Welsh Labour and and supporting it. The Conservatives not supporting it, and we're starting to see that on all kinds of issues, aren't we? Popping up. We've had the ULEZ extension around, out of London, and the war, the war that's creating between people on that issue, and it's turning a Conservative Labour debate, which side you're forming on. The school fees that Andrew's just brought up, it's very political. We're seeing the net zero extension of that. Again, all firing shots, and they're not the usual ones, are they? They're not immigration, they're not law and order, they're not tax. They're other ones. And I think we're in for a long period of time where quite a lot of our lives are going to be impacted quite dramatically, more out of politics than out of common sense at the moment.
Yeah.
So
I could, and HS2 as well. It's a political maneuver, obviously, to save money. You're going to hopefully win some seats from it, isn't it, or win some votes, really. What else you picked out, Rob? Couldn't agree with you more on all that.
I was just reading about Apple feels the heat over their new iPhones. Apple have released the iPhone 15, which is an important part of our business. And with the great stampede and the loyalty of Apple fans and Apple supporters out there, everyone's trying to get their hands on one. Everybody is wanting one for Christmas. It makes our lives very complicated for the next 2 or 3 months because supply is restricted and controlled very well by Apple to keep that demand at the forefront and keep everyone keen and desperate for it all the way through to Christmas, and then it eases up traditionally afterwards. But they've got a terrible problem apparently with their new titanium shells. They're overheating, and this is in the paper. So there were 2,000 complaints that the aerospace grade titanium clad iPad iPhone 15 Pro is just overheating all the time. So it would be a tragedy if they have to recall a product at this early stage in its launch. And it would be a sort of personal first, I would thought, for Apple to have such a big technical issue.
How much does a Apple phone cost, Rob? Sort of ballpark figure?
In the £1,000 mark today,
Right.
which again is mind-boggling, isn't it, to us who've been around for a while? The thought of walking around with £1,000 cash in your hand, in your pocket, is just something totally alien to all of us. We wouldn't dream of it. Yet we put £1,000 in our back pocket, which not only cost us £1,000, is the gateway to all our banking, all our socials, all our lives, everything. And it's an extraordinary transformation, isn't it, that if we just take it for granted that you walk around with £1,000 asset in your pocket, and
or even £1,000 asset you drop down the toilet.
That's happened. That has happened to me on one occasion, I have to admit.
What about you, Andrew?
I was having a chat with my team the other day, actually, because Mark mentioned at the front, we've now got 82 employees. I think we've doubled in size in the last 12 months. So every time a new colleague comes in, of course, they get their laptop and they get their phone. We're spending more on phones now than we are on laptops.
Absolutely.
And none of my colleagues use the device as a phone. They use it as an internet screen. You start thinking, what has gone wrong here? That I'd rather give them a better laptop or an iPad or something like that has a lot more, kind of interface and capability than the device that we call a phone.
Without a shadow of a doubt. Okay, well, thanks ever so much for those. Let me go pick up some stories that I've got from the papers, actually. And this is one that seems to be an epidemic of shoplifting in this country at the moment. UK shoplifting crisis, says The Sun. Champagne. This is a story about Sainsbury's and how they're stopping shoplifters from stealing the champagne by actually having pictures of them in the fridges. So you go and pick it up, and then you've got to take it to the counter. So in other words, if you've got a bottle of champagne here for 48 quid, it's actually a photograph, and you've got to go to the counter to go and get it. And we've seen other things of empty chocolate boxes, baskets of stuff just stolen, people walking into Tesco Express and just filling up their basket and walking out the shop. So that's a story that definitely caught my eye. As an ex-military man, here's another story that really sort of got my goat this morning. Chief Constable, it says in The Sun, cop wears Falklands War medal, but he was a schoolboy at 15 at the time. I mean, I joined the Air Force just a year after the Falklands War, and there he is at various stages wearing his Falklands medal, which, not being funny, as an ex-military person, there is nothing worse than having someone glorifying or pretending to be something else. He's obviously in a lot of trouble, and watch his space. What's going to happen there? And finally, it's the story about Ed Sheeran. He's just released his new album, out today apparently, and one of the tracks on it is called Punchline. So there we go. I'll be
fantastic.
You won't hear the end of that story, by the way. So I'll be milking that for quite a while. Okay, let's get into.
Are you doing a rap overlay on that one, Mark? Or are you?
I could do. Anyway, let's talk about our own individual business sectors. That's okay. So great to have you on the show, Andrew. You've been based in London. We met at the Minster Exchange just a couple of weeks ago, and we've had a chat about coming on here. So thank you for making that happen. And a very exciting project. So who are Plexel, and why are why have you taken this 51% stake in Hub 8?
Yeah, so Plexel was born in 2012 as a result of the Olympic Games in London. So our sister organisation, which is called Here East, worked with UK government in order to build a social regeneration plan out of the reuse of some of the buildings that were built for the Olympics. So we managed to take over what was the TV studios and the press centre. And the whole vision there was to create an innovation campus where we brought together government, industry, academia, and startups, and we helped them collaborate. And that's where Plexel comes to play. So in 2017, we opened the doors of Plexel. And really what we are is we're building that place for innovation. So the physical sense of what you build in order to get people together, to get them to collaborate, to get them to think differently. And then separate to that, we've got a consulting business that works on what we describe as government-led innovation. So where we think about the government's science and technology agenda, where they want to intervene in markets, what they want to cause to happen. Now, sometimes that's social change, sometimes it's economic growth, and sometimes it's technological progress. Now, we are really conscious that you couldn't do that from London. So, albeit, what we created was very much part of the, Olympic legacy, and we've managed to create now over 10,000 jobs in total. But we wanted to make sure we were nationally relevant. So, in 2019, we started working in Cheltenham, and we met the guys who own Hub 8 and really struck up a really strong partnership, and have been working with them ever since then. At the start of this year, we were understanding of what they were creating at the Minster Exchange, like super excited about it, and their partnership with Cheltenham Borough Council. So that was what tipped us over the edge to say we should turn this partnership into a marriage. And we invested in a 51% stake in that business. And now Bruce Gregory, who I know you know, Mark, but him and I are kind of joined at the hip with our plans around how we can create Minster as the start of the bridge to Golden Valley that I referred to earlier on. So how can we make the town and Hester's Way be more connected from a social perspective, an economic perspective, and a technology perspective? When I speak to people internationally about Cheltenham, I think that their eyes light up in a way that I don't think the town of Cheltenham really realises. The presence of GCHQ, the intellectual capability and the products that come out of Cheltenham, particularly in cybersecurity, but in other technology domains as well, are so globally notable. And I think what my mission is here to make sure that we take that kind of hyper-local benefit we can drive out of these places for innovation. Don't forget the people in the community, so make sure that's the basis of what we deliver, but we also deliver internationally renowned capability through what we do. So I couldn't be more delighted about working in the region and getting to know everyone and trying to be part of this ecosystem going forward.
So how can more businesses, local businesses and suppliers get in contact with you and connect? Are there opportunities for other companies to work with Plexel on these different developments?
Absolutely. So 3 ways of engaging in the efforts we've got in Cheltenham. So first thing is we work in partnership with the G1st LEP and Cheltenham Borough Council as one of the 5 growth hubs in the county. So we operate that capability today. So Business Navigator, you may be familiar with, or listeners may be familiar with. So getting involved in understanding what services are available for your company in its establishment, in its scaling journey, or in some of the crises that might emerge from time to time in businesses. So get in touch with that and watch out, because we're going to supercharge it when Minster Exchange opens. We've got a physical space which will be the growth hub. We really want to get people in there and get them engaged. The second thing is, become a member, attend our events. On the Hub 8 website, you'll see a series of events that are open to the public, and we're launching in Minster a 150-person event space, which will have a cafe and a bar and things like that. So it'll be a real cultural icon for the town. So come along and get engaged. And then finally, we run a whole series of innovation programs. So if you are a digital company, a tech company, Rob, maybe even one for you, think about come on one of our incubators or accelerators. There are various themes. Some of them are virtual, some of them are physical, some of them are in Cheltenham, some of them are elsewhere. But have a look at them. And if there's something we can do to help the growth of your company, then we would love to.
Oh, brilliant.
Okay, thanks ever so much for that. Great insight into there and great opportunities. Okay, Rob, I mean, we've worked together a long time, but just give us a quick overview of Listers, and I know you've been going for a long time, but some of our viewers might not. So tell us about the company, mate.
Yeah, we've actually been going for 22 years now, based in Stonehouse, and supplying originally telecom services to businesses in the county and surrounding counties, and occasionally a little bit further astray than that too. And that's about putting phone systems into. Originally, it was putting phone systems into offices and cheap call packages. Today, it's now about fast internet access, cloud telephony, mobile phones, IT services, the whole lot. And we've just seen this extraordinary transformation from the analog to digital to IP, and from on-premises services to cloud-based services, which have transformed the way we've all been able to work and live and do our stuff, and just the speeds of broadband to support the needs of our businesses, and has been tremendous. I'm old enough to remember when we were talking about kilobits per second, and now we're talking about gigabits, and extraordinary difference in speed. So yeah, we've been around a long time. We've seen the evolvement of telecoms and IT into where we are today, and yeah, we supply lots and lots of businesses in Gloucestershire and the surrounding counties.
Now, you and I are working on Nelson's Trust. What's your connection to Nelson's Trust? Because it started with father, wasn't it?
Yeah, so Nelson Trust is a charity that originated in Stroud as an addiction recovery on-premises operation. It would take people in and help them beat their addictions, originally with alcohol, and then drugs, and now other things too. And the charity has evolved tremendously over the years, from a Stroud-based operation only to operating out of Gloucester, Swindon, Bristol, somewhere deep in Somerset, which I forget, in Cardiff. And they've evolved to add, on top of the addiction hope services, to also women's services, and helping women reintegrate into society again after some very difficult times they've had. So it's a charity that's very close to my heart. My father was deeply involved before he passed away, as and was the chairman there. So we support it. We've wanted to be involved with it in a far more humble way than he was, and so yeah, we quietly do what we can to help raise a bit of money for the charity.
Now, you and I have joined forces, actually,
yeah.
And this week we launched the mobile recycling campaign, which I'm really proud of. It's getting traction already. We launched it at the Grove Hub in Gloucester.
Nice link with Andrew.
And then we went down to Stroud, which is where the story we're releasing today, and on Monday we'll be down in Cirencester, and then going out throughout the regions, and obviously covering Cheltenham as well. And the idea is that we've got these mobile phone bins that you can go to any of the Grove Hubs, put your old mobile phone in there, or you can collect, if you're a business. We've all got mobile phones lying around. I had 15 in my house and my office as well, lying in drawers and stuff. I don't like to throw anything away. And they're just they're doing nothing. So the idea is you put them in a cardboard box, phone Andy Jarrett up from Nelson's Trust and he'll come and pick him up, or grab your old mobile phones and take them to one of the growth hubs. That's the basics of the campaign, isn't it, Rob, really? Because
that is the basics of the campaign.
these mobile phones, they're not really worth anything individually as such. So what do you do with the actual leftover phone?
Well, we sort of talk about ethical disposal of those phones. As you say, they've been sitting in your drawer or in the back, in the cupboard for a long time. When you finally clear them out, you'll probably chuck them in the bin or something like that, and they'll go into landfill. We're looking to recycle, upcycle those phones when we collect them. The ones that have some ability to repair or reuse, they'll get cleaned up and sold on, typically to third world countries. Those that are beyond the point of return, they're able to sort of upcycle some of the components inside them. There's small traces of gold and lithium and silver, not enough for you or me to get rich or even to make a nice engagement present for anniversary present for our beloved, but enough when you aggregate them over thousands and thousands of phones to be used again, and so that's the driver behind it, that is sort of ethical recycling part. There's also a protection point of view. We get them wiped, get them clean. So, there's an awful lot of information that lots of people leave on those phones and don't think about it. From a company perspective, that's a GDPR type issue to be concerned about. So we take care of that one. And as a byproduct, not as a byproduct, the driver behind this is we get to raise some money for this wonderful local charity of ours.
Well, this is it. Last year we raised £1,000, and Rob raised £1,000,
and that was really
not really trying. And then we had a coffee about it and thought, actually, why don't we really put some guts into the backbone of this and really drive it forward? Let's get as many different businesses as possible. So if you're sitting there with an old mobile phone in your office or your drawer, give it to us and we could do something. So how many phones?
Only yesterday, somebody just dropped a box in. There was 15 in this box for us, which was great. Another very good customer of ours dropped a box of 300 of them in recently. So we've got off to a good start with the campaign.
Wow. Okay. Fantastic for that. Okay. Right. We're going to the pick of the punchlines now. It's my favourite part of the show. Well, it's all favourite parts of the show. It's always interesting to see what our guest panelists actually reading on Punchline as well. So what have you picked out, Andrew?
So the one that caught my eye was the appointment of UCAS's new CEO, Joe Sexton. So UCAS, as I understand it, is the kind of the gateway between further education and universities to make your application to get into universities. And the thing that got me thinking, linked to our conversation earlier on, is the application of VAT onto private schools obviously affects people up to the age of 18. But as I understand it, 7% of the population. You then start to think about universities and say, well, okay, so if you're taxing mandatory education, what about taxing non-mandatory education like universities? And is there a risk that we're wandering into something where VAT starts getting applied to university education, and what implications that would have? Because obviously it's much broader in the electorate that would hit, and maybe not the wisest political move. So just really got me thinking about how these news articles are starting to intertwine with each other. Obviously, I wish Jo all the best in her new role as CEO of UCAS. But interesting times ahead, I think, politically.
No, great story. Thank you very much. And I had a chance to meet the new Chancellor of University of Gloucestershire as well, who came from UCAS. So very nice lady, Claire, surname Chandler, I think it is. Can't remember the surname at the moment, but anyway. Great opportunity for her as well for the uni. Rob, what have you picked out from the punchline, please?
I picked up your story about the broken system of planning. I know planners are an easy target, because if you don't get what you want, you think there's something wrong. But the article you wrote mentioned there are 250,000 empty premises largely in urban areas at the moment in the UK, and then went on specifically to talk about 80 Westgate Street, and how the developer wanted to turn that into a multi-purpose flats above and a community centre underneath. And we're all looking at our town centres and wondering how on earth we can keep regenerating them, particularly as retail is moving more and more online, and we're all less interested in going shopping in the town centre. So what do we need? We want to go there to eat, be entertained. We need people there. You need a lively feeling. And then, you know, we've got the forum and the wonderful development that's going on in Gloucester as we speak, and not too far away from launching. You know, that's all part of it. But we need a coordinated effort, don't we, with planning and making these possible. So I would love to see more support of urban regeneration, making it easier for those types of brownfield or inner town sites to get planning. You know, but then there was the other article, wasn't it? Shipton Mill, you know, a wonderful miller of ours out of Tetbury, the managing director shares the same surname as me, John Lister. So
you know, they're
yeah, obviously a great guy based on that simple fact. But you know, the challenges they've got of reinstigating their planning in Frampton-on-Severn, another challenge, isn't it? But so it seemed to be challenge after challenge. But then, just to finish, the bit that tickled me a lot was your article about the falconry expert who has announced that his falcons won't actually do a very good job keeping the pigeons off the new forum development. And at that point, I start to have some empathy with the planners. You know, you really have to be an expert of so many different subjects, and probably knowing the quality of the falcon's ability to get rid of a pigeon might be beyond the scope of what we could really expect of planners.
It's funny, it's pigeons and seagulls, and
was it pigeons, seagulls? Sorry, have I got it the wrong way around?
All that happens, I don't know if you've ever seen it, when the falcons go up, just because they've done this a few years ago in the city centre, the seagulls go absolutely nuts, and then they move over here into outside of the town. And so you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning with someone going, Mark. Anyway, that's all we got. That's the story that pick of the punchlines for me, actually, is Berkeley Green put up for sale, the Stroud College. I mean, that came out of the blue. Actually, I wasn't expecting that. That could be the site to the UK's next generation of small nuclear reactors. So watch this space. It's a fantastic positive story. It could be a fantastic positive story as well. And that's all we've got time for today. I'd just like to thank my fantastic panel. Sorry that one of our guests couldn't make it at the last moment, but it's been a sterling show. So just like to thank you both for coming along. Thanks ever so much for joining us today. And also my wonderful sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors. If you like the show, please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you again next week. Remember, it's all in the punchline. Bye.
Thank you, Mark.